Hello, I'm Reggie Young. I'm here with Imogen from the Freedom Geek. Imogen, if you could take a quick minute and explain a little bit about who you are and how you got started.
Hi, thank you, Reggie. Sure. It's always a big question, isn't it? I was planning to frame that answer a little bit in line with your brand. So you talk about business mindset, travel. So very, very quickly on the three. Business, I'm an entrepreneur. I self-identify very strongly with that label, I suppose, for various reasons. I've been through the pain and the rewards and the roller coaster of that. Mindset, very passionate about transformation, learning. Anyone who's ever transformed anything major in their life is always a huge inspiration for me and someone that I feel that we can learn from. And then on the travel, I'm also a digital nomad. So I've been traveling for it'll be my 5-year travel anniversary in April. And yeah, I've been to quite a few places with that, but spent about half my time in Mexico.
Okay, excellent. And that's where I ended up meeting you was in Mexico City, I think on a WhatsApp group. And for anyone that's ever traveling, a lot of travel places, at least the nomad community, you do have Facebook groups, but the real community is really on WhatsApp groups. As soon as you go somewhere, try and find like a bar, co-working space, or people that are either working online or traveling, and ask them, "Oh, how'd you find out about this?" And they're normally like, "Oh, it's a WhatsApp group." And as soon as you add yourself to one, you can find another, and next thing you know, you'll find directories of WhatsApp groups. So I'm always plugged into. I think I have like 50, WhatsApp groups from other countries I haven't been to in a while, and I just mute them. Then if I ever go back to them, I'm ready to like hop into a community. So that's how I found Imogen. And I think we met at a talk I was giving about uh, how to hire virtual assistants. And since then, you had me on your show, and you have been able to drive a pretty big amount of traffic to the vault for signups, and you're one of the higher paid affiliates uh, for the vault. So I want to bring you on and kind of it give you the opportunity to give tell your story, what you're doing, and then kind of share with the audience, just another fellow entrepreneur and their journey. So, what are some of the things that you're currently working on, or some like roadmaps for the future?
Sure. Yes. Well, the agency, the Freedom Geek, where we matchmake entrepreneurs with smart virtual assistants from the Philippines, that was established in 2017. Um, I always say that business was an accident. I didn't mean to do it, but it was a very fortunate accident because it started from when I was in corporate and overwhelmed and didn't have enough hours in the day and was doing real estate projects on the side in the UK. And I went to the Philippines with the intention of finding people that could run a lot of those processes for me to get my time back so I could still work the hours that I needed to work in my corporate job. And they would help me. I would teach them the strategies, the things that I needed to be done, the processes for the real estate side of things. And that was a success. Not immediately. It was a little rocky road. I made mistakes and learned from them and adapted and then made it a success. And then other real estate investors started asking me how I did that and how much they cost and what was I delegating and do they speak English and all kinds of things. And I answered those questions quite enthusiastically. I was having a good time because I had some quite sophisticated real estate investors who are way ahead of me on their entrepreneurial journey want to have a real conversation about this. And that was great. And um, and what I noticed was I'd also been through a cycle of learning how to raise money. I raised money from private angel investors. I used that financed for property projects. I had to be very resourceful at the beginning of this journey. And raising money is a huge topic in real estate, how you do it, etc. And what I found really interesting at the beginning was people wanted to talk to me more about virtual assistants than they did about raising money. And it just goes but to show this whole thing about time is more precious than money for so many people. And they'd be like, that's really interesting, the money thing. Let's first of all talk about the VA thing. And I was like, really? Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And so that started and they liked what I had to say. And then people started saying to me, well, can you do this for me? And it wasn't actually something I officially did. I had a full-time job. I had a business. I was pretty tired. And they're like, oh, can you get a VA for me? And I sort of thought, well, I could. And they're like, please, you've got all the systems, you know what you're doing. And I said, yes. And with a little reluctance. And I think within a week of helping the first person through that, the second person, the third person had already been in touch. And the business doubled organically every year for the first 3 years with no promotion from me whatsoever.
Mm.
And then by the end of the third year, I started to realize this business was taking on a complete life of its own. And I wanted to keep the real estate projects ticking along. And I didn't really want to do my job anymore. I was quite burnt out. I was sick of it. I was at the end of the road. And I made that decision to quit and just go for it, which was terrifying. And I did that. I handed in my notice. I bought a one-way ticket to Cape Town, and I went for it. And it makes it sound really easy. And I remember for the first, couple of months having anxiety dreams that I was late for work. I'd wake up in Cape Town and be like,
Right.
I'm late for work. My boss is going to have a problem. And then being like,
Totally.
oh yeah, now I temporarily live in Cape Town and I run a business. It was very surreal that that was my real life. And then it went from there, got bigger and bigger, running the agency. And it's been a pleasure. Working with virtual assistants is not new. I didn't create it. Tim Ferriss has been talking about this like for years. This started a long time ago. You're also an expert in sourcing and working with VAs. But I think that one thing that made a big difference to me was we were good at it. I can innovate. I can do it my way. I can create my own processes and teach them to other people. I can help entrepreneurs. I get paying customers who also come back to me and say, thank you. I can sleep more. I'm more in balance. The difference that you've made, this person is extraordinary. I've got a great relationship with them. It's been incredibly rewarding for that. But one thing that I kind of mentioned to you just before the podcast is that I have got a big passion for, I guess what I call e-commerce, everything around social media and selling things online. And I would love to create and sell info products with the knowledge that I've gathered over the last 8 years of working with virtual assistants pretty much daily, to help people understand how to find them, how to work with them, how to not mess it up, how to have a great relationship with them, what they can delegate, where to start with that, how to just take a step back from the overwhelmed mess that might be their life when they start thinking about this, to know what to do next. And I've started to create those products. We're still very early, but I want to build that out. And that's what I'm going to do next. And it's been a bit of a roundabout journey to get there, where I've learned a huge amount. I'm very grateful for it. But that is, yeah, where where I am right now.
Excellent. A few points there I want to talk about, and the first one was you mentioned when you like fired the man and kind of was able to travel and be your own boss, and how you like were wondering if you were late for work. I also had the same thing for like a solid year and a half, like where I thought like when I my job before I was in the military and I was a nuclear missiles officer and I was underground. A lot of the times we'd have alarms go off a lot of the time, and if alarm went off, that was not a good thing. And for a solid year, every now and then I would just be like in a whole nother country, and I would hear an alarm or I would think an alarm's going off, and I would just like pop out of bed and like, what's going on? Like, and then I'm like, I don't even know where I am and like what country am I in. So like, obviously, we all deal with adjustments while we're changing our lifestyle, and it's to be expected. But I think like the freedom that comes with it, um, obviously, is totally worth it. But it just that immediately made me think and kind of like a parallel story because as you were talking, I was thinking about all these things that were coming up in my mind and all these like similar parallel stories. That was one of them. A second one was people reached out to you naturally because they were wondering how you were leveraging VAs. And then it turned into, and it was the very same thing for me too. You remember, I think you met Dino too, because he went to the cash floored uh, board games that you run here in Mexico City. And I met him in Playa del Carmen, and he kept asking me about my virtual assistants. So one day I decided to make a Google document and like explain my process. And he was like, you could charge a lot of money for this. Like people really need this. And I was like, yeah. And then the next person asks, and then the next person asks, and then I come to Mexico City, and then where I met you at a talk, I decided to discuss that topic as well. After making the talk on it, I had to before I made the talk, I had to make slideshows for the talk, and I was like, okay, so this is my first like speaking event. I've speak before in the military, but it was just speaking to other people in the military, right? It wasn't like speaking to uh, a crowd of people from truly diverse backgrounds in terms of like what they're do, what they're interested in, where they come from, things like that. And so I was pretty nervous, and it's just interesting how where the interest goes, the profit comes and the business flows type of thing. So like the interest people already had learning about that, creating slides for a talk, and then turning those slides into actually the first course that I made inside of the vault. And it was never meant to be a virtual assistant vault. Like it's for me, my info product game is like try and put as much resources in there for to start people who want to sell online, but kind of capture all different aspects and problems and journeys and solutions for people who are trying to go through that. I really want to do Amazon courses first, but it just made so much sense because um, it was so easy to scale that way, and like, and the kind of I would say the market moved me that way, and you were able to put me in front of your audience, and you were one of the first people to generate uh, revenue for my vault because you and I connected really well. You offered to get me out to like all the community events, so the WhatsApp groups that you're making, and that connection really bled into like a B2B relationship, which is now generating me an affiliate income every single month, and then also helping other entrepreneurs who are signed up to the vault as well. So um, those are the things that I initially thought about, and uh, kind of moving towards like the info products type of space now. It it is really hard post COVID to sell physical products in terms of a lot of the competition that's happening on Amazon now. It is much more competitive, specifically from a PPC side. There's obviously still opportunity, but the great thing about info products is there are no um, it's almost purely profit. You don't have to buy inventory and let it roll over multiple times. And so I definitely think, regardless of whatever your entrepreneurship journey is, you always want to have some kind of info product that you should sell or be able to sell, and that can be as easily as what are people asking you about, what are you good at, and it could be you write down a Google document that you turn to a slide that you talk over on a screen recording and that you sell for $20. And so I definitely recommend anyone who's trying to quit their 9 to 5 or find ways to scale and create profit in their industry is just to do that and start there. And even if you're not making money from it, it'll at least give you, um, I guess, like credit to help other people and be like, oh, I have this resource. Here it is. It can help you. And that will bring further networking opportunities that I think a lot of people will definitely find useful. So with that, I kind of
Can
want
I,
to,
can I,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, sorry, can I come back on it? Like, there's a couple of things you said. The entrepreneurship journey is so interesting with these things. And two things I was thinking with that. One is one thing I love about the entrepreneurship world as compared to the corporate world, where both are very concerned with money, shall we say? And but with the entrepreneurship world, certainly the world that I like to live in, my part of it, I love the fact that entrepreneurs help each other. You know, there is a scenario in which I could have said, you're a threat because you're also in virtual assistants. Like, I don't like
Right,
it. Or
right,
then, you know, I don't think like that. And it doesn't help to think like that. And I think that with collaboration, it's so much more powerful. And then it's really interesting what you were saying about Amazon. I over the last few years have met some really successful Amazon sellers. And I've said I'm interested in e-commerce, and a lot of them have been like, I'll help you. And some of those offers that I know have been worth their weight in gold. But for me, at my heart, it's not just, I know that the model can be really powerful, the info product model, in terms of, you know, there's a lot of profit and the delivery is relatively straightforward. You're not sending, fulfilling any kind of physical product. But I'm also a creative person and I like to create, and I know where you know, that's where my heart is. And that's what I've always known I wanted to do. It's interesting you talking about Amazon being tougher and more competitive. And I know another very successful seller who combines his Amazon physical products with info products about how to use them and sort of, you know, that kind of thing. It's got a quite clever model, combination model there. Um, and then the audience just dictating what you do is another really interesting one, because for us, there's quite often we're like, well, I want to do, you know, this, and this is what even sometimes like, this is what I think you need. And then they're like, no, I
yeah,
need this other thing. And you're like, I don't know if I want to do that. And they're like, no, I'll pay you to do that. And you're like, but yeah, I mean, by saying yes to that, that was the thing that gave me the freedom to travel and really transform my life. And as you know, it's not that I'm not completely passionate about it. I do enjoy it, but you have to start the journey to see the next mountain. I
right,
think, you know, that's
yeah.
part of it too.
Totally. And when you said, you see a lot of Amazon sellers or e-commerce sellers also do digital product. it that really helps increase like your average order value or the lifetime value of your customer by creating a digital product. And the great thing is you can either give that product away for free in different areas. You really can put that product everywhere. That I have some of my courses in the vault, I actually list elsewhere and I sell them for like $1,000, $2,000, and every now and then they get a sale. And and then I put them somewhere else and I put them in very, very unique places of the internet. And I may put one course and I put it there for free. And I have one of my courses that's like that. And I have over 1,300 downloads. And that's giving me a lot of leads. So I highly recommend, again, just to kind of go back to what I said before, anyone listening to this should definitely create an info product if you're in the physical space business. And then even if you're in maybe the service based business or the info product, try and come back the other way. So for example, if I just had the vault and I'd never sold physical products online, well, I just created, and I keep talking about it, which is like my journaling system. This is a, a journal, and I created this physical product. Um, and I'm primarily promoting that using digital means, which is podcast interviews, which is if someone subscribes to the vault, they will see the course on productivity and journaling. And so now I'm increasing my digital service, my digital info service with now the physical product. So, and I think that also gives more, like it gives at the end of the day more honest value to your customer, and they're going to feel more like I'm getting it all. It's not just something I can't touch; it's something I can touch and see, and and it is digital type of thing. So, those are things that immediately came to my head. So next thing I want to discuss here was a little bit more about your how you look at hiring VAs, a little bit of your systems, and if you could speak to really how do you find VAs for other clients out there? Because for me specifically, the course that I have is more just like general. And then I kind of niche down to e-commerce a little bit and like, hey, here's some basic things that can help your virtual assistant understand the foundations of e-commerce. But when you're hiring for people who are looking at real estate or they're looking at something else, how do you go about kind of finding that expertise?
Yes, it's really interesting. I think there's a lot going on with this space at the moment. So I've been doing the same thing for years and other people are doing it, which is, I run adverts all over the place. They get very high volumes of applicants. And then I put them through a series of filtering tests, including, aptitude, um, we, various types of aptitude tests. We test like their internet speeds, their spoken and written English. We have a whole series of tests to whittle every 100 applicants down to about 10. And then those 10 come into the database that I've got. And then when I work with a client, one thing that we do within my agency is we're very, very hands-on to really help people through the experience. Because for a lot of the people that we work with, it will be their first time hiring a Filipino virtual assistant, and they have a lot of fears and nervousness around it. And they don't want us to just take their money and never speak to them again. That is something that they're nervous of. And they've heard that with my brand, we don't do that. And it's true. So they'll get, for example, 3 different Filipino virtual assistants to interview, and that whole process is coordinated by a relationship manager who is effectively a virtual assistant who works for me at the Freedom Geek. And that will just help them because, if you've never even spoken to someone in the Philippines, then to meet 3 different people online, video on, etc., is a really good start because you can start to
Yeah.
gauge the wonderful manners, their attitude, how professional they are, their English and everything. And you've got the relationship manager on your side. So if you're struggling because you've never interviewed before, that we give interview questions. That's what I mean about really hand-holding them through the process. They'll jump in, they'll help the interview all day long. They're really good at it. They'll give their feedback. They'll be able to answer any questions they're uncertain about culture or professionalism from their perspective. And that really helps clients make a informed decision on some candidates that have already been pre-screened in a way that I know you do this and other people do this. A lot of people are switched onto this pre-screening. Let's put them through rounds and let's separate who's maybe wasting my time because immediately their application is poor and I don't need to look at it anymore, to someone who's gone the extra step of like, no, I'm going to put the effort into a good application. And that's a great place to start. I think with traditional recruitment, with LinkedIn, with other things, if you just look at someone's profile and then go chasing them, that's exhausting. That's maybe not a great use of your time. And they may not be that good. They just happen to have a profile that looks good. Unless someone has personally, someone whose opinion you respect has personally told you that person's good, you have no idea. So I do go through this, like, let's sort of summon the talent out of the dust, if you like. And we put this database and then we help people through the process and then we place them. I think at the point of placement, is where things can go very wrong very quickly for a number of reasons. And I'd like to talk about that because I don't normally talk about this so specifically. And I think in this, if you're at the cutting edge of VAs and you're looking at how to stay ahead of the curve, you need to pay attention to this kind of thing. One is relationships. So what I mean by that is just the human emotion of that VA is starting maybe with the first person they've ever worked with in America or the UK. And they are quite often so excited. And for example, if you don't meet with them in some way in the first couple of weeks, that excitement's going to start to drop. They're going to feel ignored, disillusioned, maybe a little disengaged, demotivated. They came in on this really high level of, oh, this is a great new start on day one. And, work from home can be remote. It can be lonely. You've got to really watch that balance. So we make sure to sort of spend quite a bit of time with them in those first few days to make sure they know that we are there. And I encourage clients to do that because I have seen some of my clients mess up with very talented VAs because they got too busy. And I know that's why they called us. They were too busy and they didn't put that relationship up front to have that little bit of time with them. And it doesn't have to be a lot of time. Like, it can just be like 20 minutes on the first day. And that's the most exciting 20 minutes of that person's day. So, is it worth doing that as opposed to maybe disengaging and ruining the relationship? But the second thing I want to say, and this is really important, even if that person looked like an absolute rock star from all the way through the applications to the interview,
Yeah.
they might not be. And
Yeah.
this is where I fell into a few holes, like you've obviously had it. And it's what people sometimes do is they really invest like hours of training. This is my brand. These are my processes. This is everything. And they never take the time to step back and go, can you actually do the job? And I have moved to like working that out on the first or second day. I'm like, here's some tasks. Let's see your output back. And that very simple. If we show you something, we give you a scope and then can you actually do it? That usually dictates to me within, honestly, I can do it within 3 days. Should I be working with this person on an ongoing basis? And I know with some of my clients, they have been taking 2-3 weeks with that. And I did it myself. I find it very difficult to fire anybody when they weren't performing. It took me 2 years to fire someone once. That was not something I'm ever going to do again. So I'm like, before this relationship gets really strong, before I get too excited, before I make too many assumptions about how good they are, 'cause everything I've seen so far in the application and interview stage. And, one thing to watch with interviews is some of the people who are very good at them are the gift of the gab, as we say in the UK. They can talk the talk, but can they walk the walk? Can they do, the role they were hired for? Can they give you an output that you're happy with? So I think it's really important for the VA working relationship and to take the pressure off you as a business owner. You need them to do it to, 80% of what you'd expect or to the same that you would expect or better than you. That's always interesting when a VA comes in and outperforms you on something. But that's all good news. But the bad news is when they come in, they seem wonderful and they mess up the first task. And you want to establish that as quickly as possible. And that with the information product world that I'm moving into and teaching people how to onboard and assess VAs really quickly. And just because I screen them and you screen them, it doesn't mean they're perfect. It means they're better than a lot of people that would have wasted our time. But when they come into the job, there's still that little kind of process. And I think I want to bring that to the table as a little bit of a fresher perspective, maybe than what some people are talking about at the moment.
Love it. Love it. I literally have like 12 bullet points here that I like to talk about. So after gold,
I'm not even sure if that's what you asked me, Richie. I'm sorry. Like I'm
no,
off.
no, I love it. It's just pure gold there. And very interesting. So when you talked about the interviewing process, so like I said, I've done speaking before in the military, outside of the military, podcasts, etc. But the first time I interviewed someone to be full time for my business, I was nervous. And to be honest, I still get nervous. Every single time I hire a new VA, I get nervous because I I know what it's like to be on the other side and I know how much this job means for them. So like I get really like heartfelt and I don't, because they may apply to multiple jobs. A lot of virtual assistants usually don't have jobs for I don't know what the average length is, but I would imagine that there's a really strong culture of bad employers who don't have a good system, giving really bad scope and requirements and poor training to virtual assistants, and they're jumping around trying to figure out how to get tasks done when they don't have clear direction or enough resources to accomplish what's needed. So they end up with these not bad habits, but habits that haven't been properly trained and they're going from job to job to job trying to figure out and be like, would he want this or does she want this way? So I see a lot of them, at least when I interview them, they tend to be pretty nervous. They're also speaking a language that isn't their primary language. So I couldn't imagine like speaking French. I don't speak French that well. Speak French, trying, and making it work and make sure that if I land this job, my family can eat tomorrow or, this month or the next month. So I was also nervous for that. And then on top of that, I'm like, oh, do I ask one of these weird questions? Like explain to me a time where you felt like like those random questions like that were things that I thought to myself, oh, like what do I actually want to ask during this interview? So I thought that the fact that you have a relationship manager on the call, I think is such a really good thing, both for the employer, but also for the virtual assistant. So I would imagine that like I would imagine too, you're also providing benefits to virtual assistants as well. You're not just like, farming virtual assistants to there. Like they wouldn't be coming to you unless they know, like, and trust your process and that you've been doing it for a while now. So that's one thing I immediately thought about. The next thing was,
Well,
yeah, go
yes,
ahead. Go ahead.
because
I
I want to
touched on
say a
all of it.
couple
Go
of
ahead.
things off that.
Yeah.
It's exciting. It's funny. I think you've got this common trait with me actually that we're quite emotional, empathetic people. I'm probably one of the most emotional people within my business actually. And I have removed myself from the interview process because I am not best placed to make um business judgments without relating strongly to the emotions of that person in the room. Um and it's something that I've realized my team actually are better because they are, most of my team are not emotional in the way that I am. So that, and they are Filipino themselves, so that they are making in some ways more rational decisions around it, I
Right.
suppose. Whereas I get very caught up in um that person's situation or their life, or if they're also emotional, sometimes we can interrelate. And it's not the best use of my time either. So I don't actually do any interviews anymore. And it's interesting to take a step back from that. And unfortunately, there's a really harsh reality here as well, which is as a business owner, if you don't have the right person supporting you, your business might collapse because if you've got to the point where you need that help, it's absolutely essential. So although you might feel a lot for that person, we don't have a choice but to do what's best for the business. And you'll know this as well. And sometimes that puts you into quite uncomfortable decision making. And it does. One thing that I've built is when someone gets rejected, we give them a huge amount of feedback on how to get better. Not individual feedback, actually. We give some generalized feedback, but it will address 99% of what we've seen because we thought about it when we designed that feedback. And I've also created a work from home Filipino community, and there's over 6,000 people in it. It's quite new at the moment. And we are
Wow.
there to support them, to answer their questions, to talk to them. I'll go live and talk to them about different situations. And I think part of the info products I want to create for the future for the Filipino side will be, what does your client care about? What are their expectations and how do you up manage them? Because as you say, some people come in and they've got no idea how to
Mhm.
do that. And their heart might be in the right place, but if they're misguided, that could go wrong really quickly. So I'm thinking about all of those things as well.
Mhm. Yeah, totally. And so I was thinking about, when you have a virtual assistant that maybe you have a client and they hire a virtual assistant, things are going well, maybe the first week or two or month, and they reach back out and they say, hey, I noticed like the quality of work is dropping. I'm wondering if they're actually working. They maybe it seems like they want a second job. What kind of advice do you give to clients in terms of increasing productivity or when to let a virtual assistant go? Like how do you what general advice do you give in terms of chances or processes that that you would recommend?
Yeah, I think there's a few different things. One is we've got a productivity tool that we use. There's a few different things like that out there. With my virtual, and I set expectations for this in advance. And this might not go down too well in the US local market or in the UK local market, but generally Filipino people are quite happy to work like this. And I work like this myself as much as I can. But basically, I give them flexi time. I say you can work what hours you want to work. You do need to bear in mind when our clients are going to be awake as part of that. So, but I'm very happy to be very flexible. But when they work, they jump online, they say, I'm now working. And, they go into the productivity tool and it tracks everything. It tracks the websites they're on. If they don't want me to see anything, they just stop working and I can't see anything.
Right.
I'm not interested in that. I don't Big Brother stare at them all day. I've got far better things to do with my time. But if
Okay.
I do need to investigate a situation where it seems like someone's not working, I can
Yeah.
see it. I mean, to be honest, the productivity tool, and you have to measure everything within a business to be smart about your business. You do, that's part of it. And if I'm going to offer completely flexible hours, and I've been doing this with very few hitches over the last 5 years, and I use it, like I said, myself, what am I doing all day? Am I working smart? Am I doing impactful things? Like I use it to challenge myself as well
Mm,
sometimes. How many hours am I working as opposed to what I think's going on? It's good to get a bit of a
right.
reality check on that. So productivity tools is one thing. I think nothing really outrules what we'd call gut instinct. It's
Yeah.
very obvious when we jump on with somebody if they are communicating, if they're engaged, if they're enthusiastic, or if they seem a bit distracted, if you have to repeat things, if you can't get hold of them. There are little things, and it kind of gives you a very strong initial gut instinct of I trust them, I don't trust them, or one of the worst scenarios can be I trust them sometimes because they seem quite erratic and that can be
Yeah.
very confusing.
Right.
So those things all are things to look at. I think if you're not completely convinced that the virtual assistant can take pressure off you and make your life easier, which is the purpose of hiring a virtual assistant, you probably need to let them go and you need to identify it quickly. And that might sound harsh, but for some reason they're not engaged. Maybe it's not the right thing for them because most people doing a job they love are engaged. If they're not
Mm,
engaged and there's something else going on, then, if it's not, okay, like I said, ultimately as a business, it can feel harsh, but I think it can be the right thing for both of you if there is that scenario. And there is a way to measure gut feeling. This is what was quite interesting for me because I sat down and I went, I have gut feelings about people. And I'm like, can that be measured in a practical, systemized way? And I was like, I believe I can. So, gut feeling is a collection of data points, which might include are they on time? Are they proactively messaging me? Like, how does their output look? Are they
mhm.
available? And if you start, and I did a spreadsheet where I start mapping out all the data points that I thought summed up gut instinct about whether
Oh,
someone was
wow.
doing a good, bad, or erratic job. And I
Love that.
started measuring people. I know I love those systems. And I
Yeah.
started measuring people on a scale of like 0 being the lowest and, was it 5 the strongest? I did this a little while ago. And then if you start adding up all the different data points, you very quickly see what the total is and how close to that total people are hitting across the different areas. And that effectively is what I'm turning into an Impro product to help people with onboarding, to help them make that decision quickly. And because I would not tell a BA that I'm measuring them that way because it might really freak them out and they might get
Right.
really, especially if, and they might get very nervous about being perfect. That's not what I want. I just
Yeah.
want to see them putting some heart into it. And if it does come to a point where I need to give feedback, I've got the data points. I can say you're generally late, you're on time, you're early, your communication is late, and I've got everything. I was like, Tuesday, you didn't turn up to work. I can see everything. So
Mhm.
that's very effective to answer your question. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I really love the trust your gut thing because, I've been on a good amount of podcasts and people more often than not will tell me that they don't micromanage their VA and that they don't do screen recorder tools. They don't believe in that. And I've I personally don't do that because one, I come from the military, so it's a little bit of a different background. But the one thing we're taught as soon as we move into any kind of managerial or oversight position is trust but verify. So like if you
Uh-huh.
can't, how can you ever verify something that you're not tracking, right? Like what gets measured gets managed type of thing. So I definitely agree with you on using productivity tools, but the first indicator has always been my gut. When, like you said, slow responses, um, tasks moving slower than they should, and you're kind of like wondering like what's going on. Um, so
Mhm.
for me, the process that I use is I use a software called Task, and it's just there's a ton of them out there. Obviously, I know you know about a good amount of them. But it takes a screenshot I have it set to every 10 minutes. Not some people will do it like every hour. For me, like I can't verify something on the hour basis, but I don't want to verify something every minute and slow their computer down. I don't do webcam recordings because I know it's them. If it's not them, then maybe at least the job's getting done, but I'm pretty sure it's them working type of thing. And a lot of people who work remotely too, generally speaking, who prefer to work remotely versus um, in a physical place, I've had a few virtual assistants in the past that don't like to be visual. They don't want to like have to get ready for work today. They just kind of want to like be non-visual in terms of the camera, and they just want to be able to get their stuff done. They don't want to like make themselves look all pretty or presentable in a certain way. They just want to get to work and be left alone type of thing. So um, I always tried to think to myself when I first was hiring, you know, scaling past one is really hard, but that jump is can be very nerve wracking. And I know it was for me. So I thought to myself, how can I I can't afford a $1,200 a month virtual assistant. Like I just can't. Um, and so, but I know $100 a month obviously won't work. So like for me, I was always trying to find that balance. So I thought to myself, how can I pay a virtual assistant less, but still make it so that they want to work for me? Um, so the ways that I thought about it was flexibility, because how can we expect to attract top talent, pay them significantly less, and then get them to output like quality work? So I thought to myself, okay, well, if I allow them to work like you whenever they want, literally whenever they want, I thought to myself, as long as they hit, for me, I put 35 hours a week. But if they can hit 35 hours per week, then I know on a weekly basis, they have to hit 35 hours. They're not going to do a 20-hour day of work. They're just not. And if they ever did that, I wouldn't allow that. No one's ever tried to do that. I think the most I see a virtual assistant do is a 12-hour day. But even then, it was pretty good. And so allowing them that flexibility allows me to not immediately start a virtual assistant off at like an extremely high amount. And then it also, I feel like I also get a wider applicant pool, which has been very beneficial as well. And then like just making things very, very easy for them, having a good onboarding system, good training. And so far, I've never had to really fire or have a VA quit. Most virtual assistants, they're with me for at least 6 months before they would decide to either leave or move on to another position. But I've been in similar positions as well, where you wonder like, hey, this virtual assistant was just a rock star, just killing it, and then all of a sudden I'm like wondering, like 4 days goes by and I'm like, I feel like the tasks I've assigned haven't moved forward. Like some things happen, like because me as the manager, the business owner, I know the most important things. I know what critical functions are moving in, and intuitively, I don't have to track that. I know because I feel like, hey, why haven't I gotten a ping here about this, or why haven't I gotten a notification on my project management software tool that this is being engaged on, or being moved forward. So I've had to go back through into the screenshots, and I rarely go through them. I only go through them. I'm supposed to, I guess I could go through them every single month and go through and like click through and just do like look at every single day, but I don't do that. For me personally, when I send out salaries, I would just manually log into their software, and I'll just look and I'll be like, okay, did they hit the hours that they're supposed to? Uh, Intuitively, if I feel like they were moving fast and doing like a great job, I don't need to dive in like on the weekly basis. But if I feel like things aren't going on, doing that well, I'll literally just hop in and I'll look and be like, okay, you worked an hour here. Now you literally didn't hit the required hours 2 weeks in a row. Like what's going on? And that has allowed me to verify, and then I can kind of bring that. And I can say, hey, your multitask, you haven't been hitting the hours, and why were you stuck on this window or on this task for 4 hours when it should have at most taking you an hour and a half, and then in the past has only taken you 30 minutes. So having that ability to verify, but then kind of trusting from the beginning, I think trusting them allows for that really good work culture, but verifying allows them to hold themselves accountable. I've even gotten to the point where I'm requiring my virtual assistants, depending on what I'm seeing, is they will go, part of their reoccurring productivity schedules, they will go and they will have to tell me specifically if they didn't hit their hours for the week. So if they never hit their hours for the week, they have to send me a notification saying, "Hey, sir, I didn't hit my hours." They don't have to say sir. It's just no matter what they call me sir. It's like the cultural difference. Hey, like I didn't hit the hours for the week. Here's the reasons why. And then that becomes at least food for thought for me. Oh, like my had a funeral this past weekend. It's really, really tough. I'm going to try and make that up next week. Okay, thank you for letting me know, or letting me know ahead of time. And I really try and give them all the authority, because trust and responsibility has to match authority. And I realize that's like a breakdown in a lot of businesses I've seen. So when I give that to them, it really, I think it really creates a really positive culture, and a really good like self-management. But you can never really, I think, clear your business indefinitely of employees that are going to work like robots and be the most motivated at whenever you need them to push it forward, and never have life get in the way. So those are just, I guess, my initial thoughts there when it comes to creating positive work culture and trusting and verifying.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we're huge on flexibility. And one thing that I love is a lot of my clients are really open to it once they understand that there are things like productivity tools. So it can make the difference. We've had people call us who think they need someone to work UK hours. And then we challenge it and we say, why? What is it that needs to be done? Like,
Mm,
does it matter if they start work at midnight because they're ahead? and they finish by, 6, 7, 8 a.m. in the morning, once they're trained. And the work, is that a problem? And, sometimes people are like, no, that sounds better actually. And I'm like, well, there you go. And then they might be, and it's like a better rhythm for them. But yeah, the flexibility, we're huge on relationship. We're huge. I mean, I have a team meeting every week and it's never chaired by me. It's chaired by one of my team. So we have rotating chairs and they follow a similar agenda, but I think it encourages them with presentation and leadership skills, and that they love chairing. They're always like, no, it's my turn. It's my turn. And I
Yeah,
can
yeah, yeah.
sort of sit back and monitor, but not put in a massive amount of energy, because that would be a little bit exhausting for me to constantly do that. It's the same thing. So again, I'm like, whenever I get that little flag, you're doing the same thing over and over again, I'm like, can we just delegate this out to other people? And that works well. And we have icebreakers as well. So we'll do something fun. It won't all be business. It will just be 5 minutes and we'll think of some fun icebreaker task to do as well. So yeah, and then it's funny you mentioned money. I interviewed the team for it was in different sessions. It was a total of about 8 hours to understand from them what they considered to be good money, bad money, existing opportunities in the Philippine, investments, retirements, you name it. I wanted a really good understanding of the landscape. So I asked them every single money question I could think of, including, well, what do they think about opportunities to work for like overseas clients, virtual assistant, work from home kind of setup, supporting small business. And, in the Philippines, one of the best employers they can work for are call centers. Call centers generally considered one of the worst jobs in the UK, probably the US. But call centers supporting the US, so that often means a graveyard shift for them. It does usually mean they have to physically go there. And the reason they're considered one of the best employers is because of the progression structure, the money, and the benefits. And
Mm.
it's not that hard for an entrepreneur to put in an equivalent offer, or, maybe even less money. That I've seen loads of surveys, people accept less money to work from home because they appreciate the work-life balance, and life can be cheaper, etc. So, it's kind of interesting because that comes up and people challenge it. And I'm like, well, that product will be packaged up and put out there. But I'm like, until you speak to Filipino people about 8 hours about what good money and bad money is, try not to assume too much, because we can actually be providing them some of the best opportunities they've ever had. And then it's interesting when I was thinking about when you mentioned as well, like rock star VAs who performance drops. What I've had happen in my team a couple of times is I've fired VAs who are effectively entrepreneurs in themselves. And we need to be really careful about these people because we're
Yeah.
quite attracted to them. And those guys will come in, they don't mean to do it. They will soak up everything they possibly can and they blaze. And then, of course, they go off because they were always meant to do their own thing. And that's something that we understand the calling. So I now try and identify as fast as I possibly can if a VA is really an entrepreneur. And if I believe they are, I might have like an entrepreneur type arrangement with them inside the business. I need you to do X, Y, Z for me. And when that time comes that you want to go off and do your own thing, or you want to do it now, maybe I can support you either with some kind of mentorship, possibly financially. It really depends what you're doing and what that looks like. Because my part of my vision is to support entrepreneurs. And if that happens, it doesn't happen too often, but if it does cross over and I see that, and it took me two entrepreneur VAs working for me and then leaving, and me saying what went wrong, and it was the rock star Blaze who then suddenly disappeared, to recognize that and recognize that maybe I should have handled them a little bit differently. And in a way I would love to be handled if I went to interview for an entrepreneur and they would sit me down and say, look, I feel the energy. What is really going on with you? What is it you really want? So
This is really great conversation. It's stirring up, I think, a lot of amazing talking points for anyone who is interested in hiring a virtual assistant. The one theme that you've talked about and brings a truth to me, having helped other people as well. A lot of people who are either interested in hiring VAs, or maybe even they don't want to hire them, or they just got started and they can't find success. I always find some kind of excuse. Well, I need my VAs to be working at this time, and that can't happen. I need um, I need this type of work, and they can't do that type of work. And uh, I just I can't create that kind of response. Whatever it is, I've always heard some kind of excuse, whether it's timing, affordability, quality of output, expertise. I've heard all the excuses, but the reality is, as a business owner, you have full creative control to solve the solution the way you want. So if they have to be at work at 9 o'clock, if you need 9 o'clock meetings every single day, I know someone that literally requires their virtual assistants to meet with them every single day. Well, then make that if that's the requirement in how you want to run your business, go ahead and do that. But you can create that, right? And for me, when I try and prioritize things, I want to be able to start my virtual assistants for me personally at a lower pay scale because I've tried hiring virtual assistants at like starting for 750, sometimes $1,000 a month, and I end up finding for me personally the range between $1,000 a month and below can be right around the same bucket, at least for how I'm working online, the tasks we're doing, how we're leveraging software, etc. So when I'm generally, I literally just blanked out. When I am hiring a there we go. When I hire $1,000 a month virtual assistant, when I'm trying to create that creative solution, it's like, okay, how about I just make them work whenever they want, and when they have that flexibility to work whenever they want, they're more attracted to stay on the business. But the downside is if you have a critical thing that has to happen and you have to move that forward, how do you make that happen? Well, I thought to myself, well, if I just made this requirement that they can work whenever they when I want, what if I have a task that requires 4 hours of work tomorrow and the person who's going to work on it isn't going to work tomorrow because they decide to take the day off and that's just what they decide, right? So instead, what I do is I create overlap. May hire a second virtual assistant, or for a long time, I required when I have a lower amount of virtual assistants because the amount of virtual assistants I have, it kind of ebbs and flows depending on my workload. What I will do is I'll say, hey, your position right now, you're required to log in at least 30 minutes a day. Like all you're doing is looking for the fire. You'll know exactly where the fire is because you understand our workflow, and at least you're handling the fire. And then I may like tag people and be like, okay, you're on call, Monday through Wednesday for this week, and then the next virtual assistant's on call, or the next one will check and manually. Right now I'm selling some things on Walmart, and there is no API for something that I'm trying to do, so it can't be automated, and the fulfillment has to happen manually. And I get orders on the weekend, but how do I make them work on the weekend? Well, I create a critical task that says, hey, like you once a week, once a month, you're going to be in charge for that week to handle the manual orders. It literally takes them 15 minutes. They log in 15 minutes and it's done. I didn't have to require them to work Saturdays, and they kind of know these things. And I put that in the job description, maybe required to work 15 to 30 minutes per day for some time, something like that. And so that really comes down to creating that creative solution to that problem or that barrier that you think as to why you can't hire a virtual assistant or why that virtual assistant isn't successful. And then one thing I really liked you talked about when you had your rock star leave is you ask. So you literally ask your virtual assistant, how can I support you better? What kind of benefits would you looking for? Would you want healthcare?
Yeah.
What, you know, if you don't have that feedback loop in your system or in any business, you're like, it's going to fail over time. So I really love that you asked and you create creative solutions for your virtual
Yeah.
assistants and clients.
It's funny what you're talking about with people with excuses. I can't find a virtual assistant that XYZ. And it's like, well, you remember that virtual assistants are people, right? You remember this like basic thing that I always say when people are like, what's a virtual assistant? I'm like, it's a smart person. And they're going to have different backgrounds, different expertise, different requirements, different, personal motivations, all of those things. So it's probably not true that you can't find. Maybe it's very challenging to find that person in the Philippines. Then you need to look to a different region or someone with an expert skill set. Maybe you need to change your proposition and you're offering, too low pay for unsociable hours, and you need to just tweak that proposition so it works for them upfront and the right people are coming to you. There's a lot of things around that. And as you said, like someone called me and said, what benefits should I offer my virtual assistant? And I said, how about you ask them what's important to them? And they were absolutely gobsmacked. I'm like, because that's an individual person. I can give you a few ideas and suggestions, but I don't know what that person's primary motivator is. And, if you ask them or if you offer them a choice, if they don't come up with things, then you're going to be in a much stronger position. You should do that with everyone in your team because it's always going to be individual. But the thing that runs alongside it, and I think you and I are both quite good at this, but a lot of people really struggle, is designing systems and processes that solve your solutions. And that's where I know when I talk to people, they're like, oh, wow, I would never have thought of designing what you've just designed. And I'm like, yes, thankfully I'm good at that. And it's the world of the McDonald's world where like a whole business can be run by teenagers because their systems and processes are so good and everyone knows exactly what's going on because every cheeseburger looks the same way. And getting to like that incredible level where even if you had virtual assistants who weren't amazing, everything is so clear and systemized that it works regardless. And that's a really interesting thing that runs in juxtaposition with get the good people, the best people. And when your business is messy and chaotic and it needs cleaning up, and a lot of people need to make judgment calls, the good people are absolutely essential because they're going to have to be doing that. And you need someone who can think on their feet a little bit. When the business becomes more and more systemized and you're sending templates, and when, this hits stage two, you pull that lever, which is you've got a lot of that going on in your business, then you don't really need someone who's that proactive and forward thinking. There are some people that are machines once they're given a process with crunching out work. And I have people on my team, they're pretty much personality wise the polar opposite to me because I need variation to feel alive, whereas they like the same thing and change makes them a bit twitchy. So it's really interesting how these different things kind of come together, the people versus the systems, how you handle both and how you handle both at different parts of your business. So I'm in a stage of systemizing more and more, and I have very bright VAs supporting me with implementing designs and systems so that other people can run them in the background once they've got a very clean system out of the work that we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely love it. I feel like we can literally talk for another 3 hours about this topic. But yeah, the importance of systems, scaling past just your own workflow is one thing. Having one VA is another. Having a team of three is another. For me, like when I had three virtual assistants working for me full time, I really felt like I was replacing myself in a lot of other ways, especially when I'm having them work on multiple tasks because they're working on different times. People always ask me, like, how are you doing all the different things? And people will tell me, like, hey, you should probably focus on one thing. But the reality is I have so many VAs doing so many things. People think that I'm the one doing it all. I'm really not doing it all. This journal that I made, I I probably put an hour into it myself. But this is like the fourth edition and all that kind of stuff. It was multiple virtual assistants that pushed this forward, that compiled it all together, that had never formatted a book in their apps. They'd never formatted one in their life, never even used a majority, like I would say 80% of the skills required to create this journal. But they learned that through a process, and that process was scaled out from myself to SOPs, from one to another for a good system. So definitely leverage good systems and leverage people like us who offer support for virtual assistants, because you don't want to spend that first 6 months or a year building out a system that's just going to fail you because you haven't gone through those growing pains. It's much better to connect with one of us, take our course, consider our services, and you'd be much better off. You save yourself a lot of time, a lot of stress, and build yourself a lot of confidence. Going all the way back to what you said, having a success manager on the call with you to help you vet that first VA hire. I mean, that first VA can really make or break your confidence
Yeah.
and your momentum in your business. So, with that, Imogen, if you could please tell us a little bit on if anyone is interested in reaching out to you, learning more about what you're doing, how can they get in contact with you?
Yeah, sure. So with this slight shift, I'll say a couple of things. My website's www.thefreedomgeek.com. So you can go on there, you can book in a call with us if you want us to help you find a virtual assistant. That's something I've been doing for a long time. The new world that I'm moving to is the info product world. So I have another website. It's also connected to the Freedom Geek. So you can find us through there. And the first product that we're creating, which is a freebie to give away, and it's based on a question that we get asked all the time, which is what can you delegate to a virtual assistant? So people hear these conversations, they get excited, and then they get stuck because they're like, practically, what can I delegate? I don't really understand step one to take that baby step forward. So that has got 50 tasks that can be delegated to a virtual assistant. It's a free giveaway. There's the new website that we're putting together, delegationlifestyle.com. And then, the next step up there is our 500 tasks you can delegate. And then it will be, I haven't created them yet, but it will eventually be courses on how to find and work with virtual assistants successfully. And, the systems that I built are very openly share systems and processes and tools that I know trip people up and that they need.
Yeah, and then, like you said, to kind of cap on that, another question, like you said, how, oh, I don't need that much work. I don't need to do this thing, or like, what did I do? What did they do when I can't give them enough work because I'm sleeping? With those 50 tasks, they can build so many other functions of your business that you would not even believe. And to get ready for that next project you want to work on, or push another project forward, or do product market research, there's so many different things they can do. So they'll definitely get a lot of value out of that free download. So if anyone's interested, please connect with Imogen, connect with the Freedom Geek. I'll link that down below in the description. Imogen, thank you so much for being on the show, and we hope to have you back soon.
Yes, pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.